Okay.
So welcome everyone. And I know this is a lunchtime success series. So I'm happy to have you here and just be able to participate. And I hope you plan to attend even a future session. All these sessions are geared towards success, especially given these next couple weeks as you prepare for graduation. And I just want to thank the Office of Counseling and Placement for hosting this event for seniors and for all students and staff. But my name is Christina Herbin, and I'm an adjunct faculty member at Washtenaw Community College in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I've been teaching there since about 2012, mainly psychology courses and human service worker courses. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. So I specialize in working with college students and young adults, helping them work through depression and anxiety. And I have my own private practice in Ann Arbor, Michigan as well. Today's workshop or session will focus more on staying motivated during senior year. And I want to just go over the agenda. So I know that there's only a few weeks left in the semester with final exams fast approaching and just with due dates becoming daily occurrences for a lot of college students. But there's also just so many distractions, and I'm sure just the pandemic fatigue has set in as we all continue to adjust to this new lifestyle. So it's so easy for us to procrastinate, and that procrastination can replace our productivity. And according to the American Psychological Association, between 80 to 95% of college students procrastinate. And procrastination is especially high when it comes to doing our coursework. So you're not alone. And this space can just serve more as a support just for your success as you wrap up your semesters and prepare for graduation. Also, being seniors, we know that senioritis kicks in, especially as we get closer to graduation. And this is when we experience low motivation, like more boredom. We may skip a class or two. We skip a homework assignment, or we skip studying for a test. And so today's session will focus more on providing a brief overview of procrastination. We'll look at some of the reasons as to why we procrastinate, and we'll end on a discussion of being able to explore some practical strategies to manage or limit procrastination. So I like to start with just some general ground rules, just as we create this space here. The first one is just a sense of safety. So I want each of you to feel free to participate and know that you're not forced to share if you don't want to. And that this is a no judgment zone. So don't hesitate to just seek out additional support, especially if you notice that you're experiencing more challenges related to procrastination or any other barriers to success. So reaching out to a support in your own life or other supports that you have on campus. Next is just a sense of responsibility. So really it's important for us to take responsibility for the learning here today and with our interactions by just using I statements as you describe your own personal accounts and not necessarily speaking for all people. And next is just respect. So it's important for us to be respectful in these virtual spaces, which means just being polite or kind. And then lastly, it's something I really value is interaction and the ability for us to be able to unmute yourself when you like, or to type in the chat box if you'd like, just to share more about your experiences, knowing that it's so common to experience procrastination. So like I mentioned, we're going to just discuss some brief definitions of procrastination and then we'll get into some more material. But the dictionary definition of procrastination is the action of delaying or postponing something. This is when we utter statements like, oh, I'll just do this tomorrow, or I'll just do this later, but that later never comes, or the tasks keep getting put off to the next day or the next day. Procrastination can also be described as the behavior of acting against our better judgment. So it's when you do X when you know you should actually be doing Y. So it's when you're watching Netflix or scrolling through social media when you know you should actually be studying for this exam or finishing this paper. Another way to look at procrastination is our present self versus our future self. So, in the moments, your present self is not aligned with your future self when we engage in procrastination. And we all practically have two versions of ourselves when we think about the role of procrastination in our lives. So, we have a future self, and this version is the one that sets goals and dreams about how great and successful our future will be. The future version of ourselves is really important because it maintains this level of hard work, consistency, and getting things done that need to get done. But then our present self is the one that's actually responsible for sitting down and doing the job. And the problem is that our present self prefers more of these instant gratifications or instant rewards over those long term rewards. And therefore, these two versions of ourselves, they clash. So, where our present self wants to watch Netflix and play video games, but our future self really wants to get the assignment done or to complete studying for the exam. Yet it's only that present self who can actually get the job done and not the future self. So when our future self and our present self don't align, we start to give in to like those immediate rewards or instant gratifications, like social media or watching TV or playing video games or any other distraction that could help us feel good in this particular moment. So, in other words, like we just procrastinate, and sometimes our present self and the future self, they're completely aligned with each other, which is a good feeling to have. And our present self actually feels motivated to sit down, to do work, which will, of course, help our future self because we're feeding into those demands. So, in those moments, that creates the ambition where we have that alignment and we feel motivated and we're more likely to engage in the act of getting stuff done, knowing we can reap those long term benefits. But know that procrastination is so common. Like I mentioned, about 80 to 95% of college students procrastinate. But a big question really to ask ourselves is like, why? Like, why do we procrastinate? And we're going to look at some of the most common reasons as to why we procrastinate. And some of these you can relate to, or some of them you've witnessed in others. One of the big ones we tend to see a lot is this fear of failure. We don't have the power to control how another person's going to respond to our work. Like if we turn in a paper. And sometimes we put more value on wondering what others will think about us or wondering what they're going to think about our writing assignment. And this can create a higher level of anxiety. And some of us could fall into this perfectionism where we feel that this paper must be perfect before I turn it in, which really discourages us from actually starting a paper or starting a task because we want it to only be perfect. And another big one we see is this fear of success. So this is being afraid of what might happen if you are successful. And more when we think about this fear of success, it comes into play with more of the change aspect of it. So it's more fear about the change that's likely to occur. This change could be based on how others would treat you, or maybe it's related to the fact that you could be the first person in your family to graduate from college. And given this fear of success, it could lead a person to engage in a lot of different self sabotage. So, a person may stall by not applying to a particular job or particular graduate program, really to self sabotage because there's more of this fear of success or this fear of change. Another big area we see is distractions. So, a lot of time you may be spending doing your homework, but you're actually just getting distracted by other things. So, a lot of us may have our phones right next to us if we're doing some type of work, or working on a paper, or studying for an exam. And the distractions can occur consciously. So if you're actively seeking out those distractions, so well, let me just scroll through my phone here, or they can be more at the unconscious level. So we're not actively aware that we are getting distracted. And that can occur by just having notifications or alerts on our phone that just redirect our attention to our cell phones, for instance. Other times we could be responding to even external types of distraction. So let's say we're just hungry. So if we have those inner cues of just being hungry, our mind is going to wander and wonder about what we're going to eat for our next snack, which could take us away from being able to read the material in a textbook or read the material for a class. And then, like I mentioned, we talk about other external sources of distractors, like having the alert pop up on our phone. And given the fact that we are spending a lot more time at home, we're surrounded by so many more distractions, and we have much more freedom to pursue them in the moment, which feed into that instant reward. And both of these distractions and knowing that we're at home, it really makes it harder for us to resist this temptation of procrastination. And then the last one we'll look at is just feeling overwhelmed. So there's sometimes we have an assignment or a task or a paper. It just seems so complex or it just seems so time consuming. And even thinking about it can just lead to more stress or feeling overwhelmed. And this sometimes leads students of falling into the trap of putting it off even further. So the fact that you're putting off this particular assignment that's quite intimidating, it backfires because we don't start the project because we view it as being too difficult, or we view it as just that we don't know what to do. And then we may start it last minute and we won't have enough time to really devote to completing the assignment. So it just leaves us feeling more stressed and more stress if we would have started earlier or asked the questions that we needed. So, as we went over some of these big examples of why we procrastinate, I want to open it up for you even to look within and just really take a look at some of the reasons why you procrastinate. And I want to open it up. And even if you don't focus on yourself, what could be some other big reasons we see a person procrastinating? Like, what are some other reasons a person could procrastinate? And you're more than welcome just to type in the chat box, but take a minute to reflect on your own. Yeah, but as you reflect on your own experiences, and I open it up for all of you just to think individually, even about yourself or about others, what could be some of the reasons why a person may procrastinate? Yep, and I'm seeing one in the chat box. So thinking too much about their task. Yeah, so think about just how much brain space it takes. Thinking of our big to-do list that we have. So that can definitely lead to us feeling overwhelmed and lead us to procrastinate. It's a big one. Yeah, I'm also seeing just worried about things at home. So, like if you are dealing with personal things and you have schoolwork or work to deal with, it's really hard to manage all of that. So, it just makes us feel overwhelmed and we may put things off and maybe have to shift our priorities. Another big one is when a lot of assignments are due at the same time, which I've noticed sometimes professors are not intentionally, but you may have 3 exams in 1 week or 2 big papers due in the same week, which it's just so overwhelming. And it's just like, where do I start? Yeah, so those are all big issues as to why we may procrastinate. And other big ones we've seen are just, like I said, some people may have difficulties making decisions. People may have a tough time asking for help. It's like if you're stuck on a problem with an assignment, it's sometimes hard to ask for help. Some of us could just be lazy. We just don't have any desire to do it. Or a person can have really poor study habits or poor time management that can get in the way. Others may have um, just not enough confidence, or maybe the material doesn't seem relevant to them. I don't want to do this particular task. So there are definitely a lot of reasons as to why we procrastinate. Yeah, and another big one, anxiety. So I don't want to discredit the fact that a person may have mental health challenges such as depression or anxiety that can contribute to some of the habits of procrastination. So it's very important to seek out medical help or get a medical consultation if you are experiencing mental health issues, because that can be a definite contributor. Mhm. Now, those are all good ones to type in the chat. And a big question really to ask ourselves is, it's good for us to know what type of procrastinator we actually are. Because once we have an understanding of what type of procrastinator that we actually are, we can then figure out what we need to do to manage it or to minimize the effects of procrastination. So just looking at these two pictures here, and I really, you can type in the chat box, so just think to yourselves, are you more of a type A which is the distracted type. So this is a person that you are just so easily distracted, and you're more likely to procrastinate due to distraction. Or you're a type B, where you just get pretty overwhelmed and stressed when you think about your to-do list or all these tasks that you have to do. That really leads to procrastination. And some of us can be both, like an A and a B. But if you don't feel comfortable, like, you can type in the chat box, what type of procrastinator are you? Either an A or a B. Yeah, so I'm seeing in the chat box both. So being an A sometimes and a B sometimes. And then I'm seeing B as another one though too. So it's good for us to just do our own reflection and understand why. Because as you can see, it's going to look different on each individual. And that could dictate what type of strategies we need to use to help manage or minimize our procrastination. No, thanks for sharing. And just another couple reflection questions for you to think about and to ponder. And like I mentioned, procrastination is more of an individual process. And although we're all likely to do it, it's important for us to reflect on the why and how would our life be different. So if you just finish this sentence completion, if I didn't procrastinate, I just take a moment to think on your own. And as you do your own self reflection of if you didn't procrastinate, even taking it one step further, if I didn't struggle with procrastination, like, how would my life be different? And what would I do differently? But take your own minute to just self reflect and really think about the role of procrastination in your life. And like I mentioned, each person's answer will be unique to them as you reflect on what type of procrastinator that you actually are and what role is it playing in my life. And Alicia, do you want to share?
Yes, ma'am. If I didn't procrastinate, I would have my assignments done on time. Well, not on time, but at a timely fashion, so where I can still have my free time and everything. And my life would be a lot different if I was doing that in the first place because I tend to procrastinate a lot until the last minute to get my assignment done. But I mean, they still get done, but it's just that if I got it done in a more timely fashion, then I would still have time for myself.
Yeah. And how different would that feel for you just from an emotional standpoint?
Emotionally, it will make me feel way better than how I'm feeling now because I'm a senior this year, so I'm graduating in May.
Yeah,
Um,
congrats.
Thank you. It's just a lot that I've been through emotionally.
Mhm.
Um, Years of being an ally because I procrastinated so much. So I think I'll feel a lot better than how I feel right now.
No, yeah, thank you for sharing. And you're not alone. Like, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that and know like how meaningful it would be for us to just get things done, and then we can actually enjoy, like, reap the benefits of just free time and relaxing. Mhm. No, that's a good example. And knowing that college life in reality, it's so stressful because there's tons of projects, there's tons of things that need to get done. There's a lot of studying required of us. There's due dates that pile up in the same week. They're here, or there. It's a lot to handle and it's hard. And as humans, we always tend to procrastinate in doing these things because we sometimes think that there's going to be enough time to do it in the next day, or we get distracted over the little things or big things that happen in our lives, or we just maybe we're lazy, like we're not really interested in it or we're bored. So we procrastinate, like we binge watch TV shows, or um, we eat, or we sleep, or we forget about due dates or assignments, or we lose sight about how much time we actually have remaining to complete a particular assignment, which then just adds to our stress levels. No, so it's good, like I mentioned, for us all to reflect on how would our life be different if we didn't procrastinate, which could help us align our present self with our future self, with the goal of just us having a better quality of life. Mhm. So we're going to talk more about some strategies to help limit procrastination. And we're going to identify three particular strategies. And to begin, we'll look at the role of prioritizing and the value of being able to have more control over our schedule, because every human gets that same 24 hours in a day. But how can we maximize it in a way that's good for our well being and for us to get the stuff done that we need to get done? Next, we'll look at ways to reward ourselves, knowing you've earned it. Like you've worked so hard to be where you are now, whether you're a senior or if you're still a student, that it's so important for us to reward ourselves. And lastly, we'll examine ways to create nourishing and relaxing environments that really help to facilitate our overall well being and to create the space to get stuff done. So, the first strategy is just prioritizing. And I know earlier someone typed in the chat box, just having so many things, so many tasks to do that it's just so overwhelming. And it's sometimes even more overwhelming when it's just stuck in our head, like when we have all these things swirling in our head of tasks that have to get done. So it's a helpful strategy just to sometimes write out all the tasks that we have to do. And being able to write them out, we can then break up that list into different groups and to rank the priority level of them, of being high priority, like this needs to get done right away, or something that's low priority. And even as we define our priorities, we have the ability to categorize them, to number them in the order of how we'll tackle them based on the priority level. And this is just one strategy because I know sometimes scheduling and to-do lists and planners and calendars, some of that can be so overwhelming just looking at it, but it's healthy for us to figure out some strategies to help us get better control over our schedules and our to-do lists and tasks required of us, just to give us that added confidence. And really, it helps us to, like I mentioned, take better control of our schedule because we all have all these tasks and projects and things that we have to get done. And just seeing it written out helps us know that this is something we can tackle and that we can accomplish. So let's just walk through an example of this strategy of prioritizing. And like I mentioned, it's really up to us to see what things work best for us. So take, for instance, as you're creating your to-do list, you have an English paper that's due in 2 weeks. And you also have a math quiz coming up on Tuesday. And then I have a big biology test on Thursday. and there's this extra credit assignment that's maybe due in a week. With me just writing out my whole to-do list of big tasks that I have coming up, I then can just see it all laid out to know that these are things that I can't avoid. They must get done. And I can then take it one step further of prioritizing them to know that these, my math quiz and my biology test, these are high priority things, things that I like need to work on immediately, knowing that they're upcoming. And then I have something that's medium, like my English paper. I still have some more time on that. And then low priority. So there's an extra credit assignment that it's not a requirement, but it's something maybe I can think about adding into my schedule. And once we have it all laid out there of our to-do list and being able to level the priority level, we then can really rank them. And of course, I'm sure as students, you have way more things on your to-do list where you'll have more things that are high priority, but you can number them and rank them when you think about, you have a math quiz and a biology test. I probably should start spending a little bit more time on my math quiz, so that ranking it in order. And then a number two would be a biology test. Of course, carving out enough time to prepare for that. So knowing that there's all these different tasks that we have to get done, that they're unavoidable. Because if we don't do these things, then they'll have major consequences for our future self and our present self. So it's important for us to think about ways to prioritize our schedule by just laying it all out there and ranking them in order of priority level. And this can really help us take the pressure off of all the stuff that we have to do and how much time we have to do it by really ranking the priority level of certain things. And knowing that something is medium priority level, it doesn't mean that we just avoid it. Maybe we just spend a little bit less time working on it each day, knowing that we have 2 weeks to complete this paper. But maybe I'll just devote 15, 30 minutes a day just to get it going versus waiting till the day it's due and I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed trying to finish this huge paper. And the next thing that's nice is crossing stuff off of our to-do list. And I think of just how gratifying that is of just being able to cross things off, knowing that we've accomplished it and that we completed it. And there is just the psychology of it. It feels good to just take things off of our to-do list. And it just helps us to recognize that we accomplished this or we completed this task and we can breathe, like to experience that level of relief. And knowing that we've worked hard to complete all these tasks and all this work, like all work and no play, it's draining. And it can make it really hard for you to work and to study all throughout your semester without really carving out time to reward ourselves or just to play. So something there's something really powerful about just being able to celebrate even our small steps. So think about if you have a big paper due, even just spending 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there, starting an assignment, like it's so powerful for us to be able to reward ourselves in those moments. I'm sorry. And knowing just from a human standpoint, like we respond better to positive reinforcers. It's like giving ourselves a pat on the back or being able to acknowledge that we've checked something off of our to-do list. Like we respond much better to that versus punishment. It's like being really hard on ourselves for not doing something. And we're more likely to do the behavior again if we reward ourselves and we get in the habit of doing it. So earlier we talked about that present self versus that future self. So the present self is really motivated by those instant rewards. And when we think about our future self, most of it's a delayed reward. So getting to graduation, knowing you've worked so hard throughout your college career to get there, it's a delayed reward to get your diploma or to graduate, or it's not instant all the time. And we have to really weigh the instant versus delayed rewards. And it's so tempting to fall into those instant rewards of the fun and the distractions or spending time with friends. And it really takes away from us being able to acknowledge the future self. And one helpful strategy is really to put into perspective the future self and to help envision like how good is it going to feel for you to be able to walk across the stage knowing you've worked so hard all these years. And sometimes framing a question in the future can help motivate us in the moment to do something, to finish that paper or to study for this exam, knowing that feeling of what it's going to feel like, knowing we've worked so hard for this, and knowing the value of rewarding yourself. So you have the capacity to experience spending time with friends, playing video games guilt free since you earned it. So once I knock out this paper or this assignment, like I've earned it, I get to reward myself by spending time with friends or watching a TV show or doing anything else that makes me feel good in the moment. And it probably feels better doing the rewarding task then versus when we have this level of procrastination over our head. Because even when we're doing the fun stuff, it's still in the back of our mind, like, oh, I still have this big assignment or paper to do. So we can't fully enjoy ourselves. Next is just about creating a relaxing environment. And each person's environment will look a little different that really helps them to focus and to stay on task with getting things done. So, for instance, if you're a person that likes to listen to music that really helps you to focus and to study, then that could work for you. And maybe it's just the genre of music. So, listening to jazz or more acoustic music is something that's meaningful for you. But it's really important to figure out what really can help create the most conducive environment for me to get stuff done, even the lighting of it. So, do you have good enough lighting or the location of where you're getting tasks done? Is it really a place that helps to motivate you or to help to create a space that puts you in the mood to work on particular tasks? And we also want our environments to be nourishing. So, not just relaxing, but just nourishing. So, when we think about this idea of nourishing, we want to think about activities or tasks that really help to support us with doing tasks and to really limit our stress, limit our exhaustion. And we talk about how some situations are unavoidable. Like we know that we have a big assignment due, or we know that we have an upcoming exam. Those are unavoidable types of stressors. And part of our biggest task is figuring out how to manage it and to minimize the stress that that situation entails. So, what are some ways I can make this particular activity less depleting, less draining, so we don't get sucked into this exhaustion funnel, which it's so common to get sucked into there, especially if we're stressed. When we look at how overwhelming our to do list may be for us each day. And knowing, like I mentioned, that there's some things that are unavoidable, but how can I make a particular task more enjoyable and more nourishing for me? And if we just walk through maybe a particular example of like maybe I have a big term paper due that I'm really nervous about, or it's just so overwhelming. Knowing that this is something that must get done, like I don't have to get sucked into this exhaustion funnel of having sleepless nights or just being completely fatigued or having the guilt if I choose to go on social media instead of working on this paper, which can suck us further into that spiral. Like, how can I make this stressor, this paper that I have to do, less depleting for me? So, some strategies could be I could just spend 30 minutes each day just thinking about this paper or just working on it in some capacity. Another strategy to make it more nourishing, maybe I can get some type of accountability partner. So I can have a classmate just sit on Zoom with me so we can just do our work together and just stay on task. So those are just some different strategies of knowing that it's something that has to get done or that it's a stressor that we can't avoid it, but how can I make it less depleting so I don't get sucked into the space of exhaustion and more procrastination that sometimes leaves me feeling worse. So, like I mentioned, I hope that these were three helpful strategies just to really incorporate into our day to day life, really to help limit the role of procrastination. And knowing that it's something that we all fall into at one time or another for a variety of reasons. So, it's important for us to know why we procrastinate and to explore like what could be the best strategies to help us work through this. And I want to open it up for us to think about, has there been a time when you didn't procrastinate? And as you do your own self reflection and think about a time you didn't procrastinate, what were you doing different at that time? Another question is, and this is something you could do again? And then could you do more of that? And I see a hand up. Alicia, do you want to share? Yep, I'm opening it up just for discussion.
Okay. Um, was there a time when I didn't procrastinate? There was a time. It was my freshman year. I really had my work done because I wasn't as active on campus.
Hmm.
I was only focused on my work my first year. Because I really came here being quiet and shy, not really meeting people. So, my freshman year was the year that I can say that I didn't procrastinate.
Yeah, and you're right. So the difference was you were less involved in campus. So now the challenge is like there's a lot of stuff you're involved in, you have more friends, you're just really are you don't have as much time as you did freshman year.
So,
Mhm. Yeah, so for you and knowing, not saying that that's a bad thing, like it's a good thing to be involved or and really exploring, this is something I have to be more intentional about my time management then, and knowing that there's a lot more things that I could be doing with my time and how can I structure it to make sure I'm getting the things done that need to get done. Mhm. And during that freshman year or just any time, has there been any strategy, even the ones that we talked about today, or anything that you've used to really help you work through procrastination?
I definitely rewarded myself a lot. Um, Everything that I got done, I would either watch TV or just talk to my parents on the phone or um, just go to grab a bite to eat.
Hmm.
Um, the small things that I really did that helped me motivate myself to keep pushing. and even down to my video game. I would always challenge myself to finish all my work for all my classes during the day, so I could get on my game right before, or maybe an hour before I call my mom. Then.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's true, like how you're prioritizing just getting as much stuff done early so that you can truly reward yourself and just enjoy the fact knowing you've earned that time to play video games or just to have rest and play. Yeah, but no, like I mentioned, this is a very stressful, overwhelming time. And knowing that part of the process is just learning to manage and minimize procrastination, knowing that it's likely to present for all of us at one time or another. And the big question to explore is really to think about like why we procrastinate. And once we figure out why, like what are some helpful strategies that could help us work through it? And then we would just put that plan into action and recognize the value of prioritizing like, our future self and delaying that gratification, knowing you've worked hard these years in college just to graduate and to just turn in these last assignments that you'll never have to do again because you'll be graduated and be transitioning to this next phase of your life. But know that procrastination still exists when we're adults. So these are just good skills to learn and to utilize and to integrate into your day to day life. But I appreciate each of you attending today and just learning more about how to recognize procrastination and or just sharing more about your own experiences, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. No, but thank you. And then I'll leave it open if anyone has any other last minute questions.
I don't have a question, but I really did enjoy your presentation and actually helping me to see everything I need to work on now, being that it's the last few weeks. The finals are coming up, so I thank you for presenting today.
Yeah, no, I thank you. And I appreciate your participation. And just like I said, it's just take an honest look at our own lives. This is meant to support you and get you to that finish line and just to reap the benefits of graduating because you definitely earned it. Mhm. And this is the toughest stretch, like these last few weeks, because what graduation is what in like what is it, a couple weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe?
I think
Yes.
it's about 5 to 6.
5 to 6, yeah. So it's coming up soon then. So this is like that countdown of just hanging on a little bit longer and knowing that it'll be worth it. No, thank you though.